Tonight, I want to teach you something about that mind of yours, the one that will not stop. And it may sound backwards at first, so let me say it plainly. The thinking that keeps you awake is not a malfunction. It was never a malfunction. It is a trait. Some minds are built shallow and quick, and they skim the surface of things and they fall asleep the moment they lie down. Your mind is built differently. It goes down. It digs. It turns things over long after everyone else has put them away. The conversation from 3 days ago, the question nobody else even noticed, the life you almost lived. You bring them all here to this bed, to this hour, and you call it overthinking, and you treat it like a flaw you have failed to fix. How many times have you heard it by now? You think too much. You should just let it go, just relax, just stop. As if depth were a switch you forgot to turn off. And maybe you believe it by now. Maybe you lie here most nights quietly convinced that something in you is broken because rest seems to come so easily to everyone else. But there is a whole psychology of minds like yours. Carl Jung spent his life on it. The field he founded is literally called depth psychology, the study of what moves underneath. And tonight, while you lie here with nowhere to be, I want to walk you through it slowly. Why your mind goes deep, why it will not stop on command, why the very thing that keeps you awake is also the best thing you have. Understanding this will not just explain you to yourself, it can quiet something in you that has been loud for years, that old suspicion that you are somehow doing it wrong. You do not need to remember any of this. There is nothing to write down, nothing to fix, no test in the morning. Let the words do the working tonight. You just sink into the pillow and listen. And if you are new here and a slow explanation like this feels like something your mind has been waiting for, you are welcome to stay. Subscribing is the quiet way of saying so, but that can wait. Everything can wait. That is rather the point of this place. So, let us begin with the pattern itself. Let us name what actually happens when you lie down. The lights go off and the world finally goes quiet, and for one merciful moment there is nothing. Then the first thought arrives. It is rarely a dramatic one, something small. A sentence you said at lunch maybe, or an email you have not answered. An ordinary mind would glance at it and move on. Your mind picks it up. It turns the sentence over and inspects the tone of it. It wonders how the sentence landed on the other person. It replays their face. It compares their face tonight with their face last month. And somewhere in that comparison, a door opens, and behind the door is a bigger question. Something about whether you are appreciated, or whether you have changed, or whether the years are going where you meant them to go. And you step through the door. You always step through the door. Do you recognize the move? That is the signature of a deep mind. It cannot touch a small thing without feeling the large thing underneath it. Other people seem to experience a thought and be done with it. You experience a thought and find a corridor. The corridor leads to rooms, and the rooms lead to older rooms, and eventually you are standing somewhere far from where you started, holding a question about your whole life at some impossible hour, exhausted and wide awake at the same time. And here is the detail almost nobody says out loud. Part of you likes it down there. You would never admit it at this hour, but it is true. When the digging goes well, when a thought finally clicks into place and some piece of your life suddenly makes sense, there is no feeling quite like it. You did not choose this trait the way you chose your career or your city, but it is yours, and on the good nights it feels less like a curse and more like a country only you know the way into. And if you look back honestly, you have had it forever. It did not arrive with adulthood or stress or your first real job. Think of the child you were. Most children ask questions, but you asked the other kind, the kind that made an adult stop drying the dishes and look at you. Where does the sky end? What happens to the people in a memory when the person forgets them? Why does anything exist instead of nothing? You did not know those were famous questions, old questions, questions with whole libraries attached. You just found them lying around in an ordinary afternoon, because that is what a deep mind does from the first. It finds the bottomless thing inside the ordinary thing. And you were probably the child who lay awake too. While the house ticked and settled, you were up under the covers with infinity, or death, or the strangeness of being you and not someone else, feeling the size of it all in a small body, in a small bed. Nobody taught you to do that. Nobody could have stopped you. And do you remember how early the corrections started? Stop daydreaming. Pay attention. You think too much, kid. The report cards with their gentle complaints about wandering focus, written by kind adults who could not see that the focus had not wandered at all. It had gone down instead of across. Some part of you learned, very young, that the diving was a thing to hide, to schedule around the world's demands, to do at night when nobody would call your name in the middle of it, which, if you follow that thread, is part of why you are here at this hour now. Night is when the diving was safe. The habit is older than your worries. It is nearly as old as you. And the child who built it was not broken either. They were just deep before anyone had a use for it. A well in a schoolyard of sprinklers, waiting for the years when people would come to them thirsty. The trouble is the cost. Because the same corridor that leads to insight also leads to the loops. You know the loops. The conversation you have replayed so many times, the paint is worn off it. The decision from years ago that you have redecided 100 times and cannot undecide once. The imagined argument with someone who is fast asleep right now, untroubled, while you rehearse both sides of a fight that will never happen. The loops do not go anywhere. They just go around. And a mind built for depth can mistake going around for going down, can spend a whole night circling and call it thinking. So you end up with both, the gift and the tax on the gift. The mind that sees more and the mind that cannot look away. And most nights you cannot tell which one is running. That is really why you are tired. Not because you think too much, but because nobody ever taught you the difference between the thinking that feeds you and the thinking that eats you. Nobody taught you because most people never needed to learn it. Their minds idle low. Yours does not. It is worth lingering on the shapes this takes because the digging has more than one costume, and you will recognize every one of them. There is the replay, of course, the courtroom of the day, where you are somehow the defendant, the prosecutor, and the entire jury at once. You call back the conversation and run it again, and this time you say the better thing, the kinder thing, the sharper thing, and the other person responds the way they never actually did, and it settles nothing, and you know it settles nothing, and you run it once more anyway. Then there is the ledger. That one arrives on the heavier nights. The ledger is the long accounting of your life so far, the roads taken and not taken, the person you were at 20 holding up their list of plans and asking you politely, what happened? The ledger does not want an answer. It wants an audit, and audits at this hour always come out wrong because the auditor is exhausted and the light is bad. There is also the rehearsal, the pre-living of tomorrow, the meeting that has not happened yet played out in 4 different versions, the difficult phone call drafted and redrafted against a person who is not even awake. You walk through doors that do not exist yet, and you feel real dread about imaginary rooms. Your body cannot always tell the difference. That is the trouble. It tightens for the rehearsed catastrophe exactly as it would for a real one, shoulders up around your ears in a dark room where absolutely nothing is happening. And then there is the gentlest costume of all and the most disarming, the inventory. Some nights the mind simply walks the halls of everyone you love and checks on them, one by one, whether they are well, whether they know what they mean to you, whether you have been good enough to them lately. It is a tender kind of insomnia, that one. Hard to resent a mind for it. It is love doing the pacing, but it is pacing all the same. And morning comes just as early either way. Which one has you tonight? Do you even know yet? Maybe you do, maybe you knew before you pressed play the way you usually know because you have been mapping your own weather for years. Or maybe tonight is one of the mixed ones, the replay sliding into the ledger opening onto the rehearsal, your whole inner cast on stage at once. It does not matter for our purposes. You do not have to name tonight's visitor to be helped by what comes next, but notice, just briefly, what you did when I asked. You looked, you turned inward and checked, quickly, easily, like glancing out a window. Most people cannot do that, or will not. You have been doing it your whole life. Even your suffering you observe closely. Even your insomnia gets your full attention. Do you see what that is? That is not a broken sleeper flailing in the dark. That is a watcher, a born watcher, watching. And a born watcher can be taught where to stand. That is all this night is really for. Not to blind you, never that, just to move you somewhere with a better view. And think of everything you have tried in order to make it stop. You have counted things. You have breathed in patterns somebody swore by. You have played voices in your ears, lectures, rain, other people's calm, hoping to crowd the thinking out of the room. You have tried exhausting yourself, running the body into the ground on the theory that a tired enough animal has to sleep, and then discovered the strangest fact of all, that tiredness makes the digging worse, not better, because a tired mind loses the strength to steer and simply goes wherever the pull is strongest. Some of it helps a little, some nights. None of it touches the root, because all of it treats the depth as an intruder to be evicted, and the depth is not an intruder. It lives here. It has always lived here. It was here before the worry, before the job, before any of the material it now works with. You cannot evict it. You can only come to terms, and the terms turn out to be kinder than you would ever guess. That is really what tonight is for. But before we go further, ask yourself something honestly, here in the dark, where nobody is grading the answer. How much of your life have you spent at war with your own mind? Add it up loosely. The nights, obviously, but also the mornings after, apologizing to yourself for the nights, the afternoons reading about sleep, about overthinking, about how to be different, the quiet, daily verdicts. Has any of it worked? Has the war produced a single treaty? And here is the stranger question, the one underneath. What exactly were you hoping to win? Picture actually getting it. The thing you have asked for all these years. A mind that stops on command. A mind that hears a hard question and feels nothing pull. A mind that lets the years pass unexamined. That meets the people you love and never wonders what is happening inside them. Is that you? Would you even recognize the person who woke up with that mind? Would anyone who loves you recognize them? Somewhere in you, you already know the answer, and the answer is why the war was never winnable. You were not fighting a bad habit all these years. You were fighting your own nature, the very faculty that makes you who you are. And a war against your own nature has only one possible casualty. Tonight, we are not going to fight it. Tonight, maybe for the first time, you are going to hear it explained and see what happens to a mind when it is finally understood instead of opposed. Have you ever noticed how alone that can feel? You try to explain it sometimes. You tell someone you were up half the night thinking, and they say, thinking about what? And you cannot answer, because the honest answer is everything. And everything sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud. So you stop explaining. You learn to carry the depth privately, like a room in your house you never show guests, and slowly you absorb the idea that the room is a problem. That realer, healthier people do not have such a room. They do not, mostly. And that is exactly where Jung comes in, because he would look at that hidden room and tell you something that might rearrange your whole relationship with your own head. He would tell you the room is not a defect in the house. For a certain kind of person, the room is the house. And everything else, the daytime, the errands, the small talk, all of that is the hallway. Rest here a moment before we go on. Notice your breathing has its own pace, and let it keep that pace. There is nowhere to get to tonight. The explanation will come to you. You do not have to reach for it. Jung had a way of dividing human beings that has become so famous, we forget he invented it. He noticed that people differ in where their energy naturally flows. Some people are turned outward. Life, for them, is the world of things and people and events, and they draw their strength from contact with it. A crowded room fills them up. Silence drains them. He called them extroverts, and the world is largely built by them and for them, and there is nothing wrong with them at all. But some people are turned the other way. Their energy flows inward toward the inner world, the world of thought and image and meaning. He called them introverts, and he meant something much deeper than shyness. He meant a person for whom the inner world is not a shadow of the outer one, but a place in its own right, a place with weather and seasons, a place where things happen. When you lie here at night, traveling through your corridors, you are not avoiding reality in Jung's eyes. You are in the other reality, the one you were built to live facing. Notice what the world did to that word, by the way. Introvert. By the time it reached you, it had been flattened into a personality quirk, a seating preference, a person who would rather stay home. And so you may never have connected it to yourself at all, especially if you talk easily and do your job and nobody at a party would pick you out of the crowd. But Jung was not describing social behavior. He was describing where a person's center of gravity sits. Plenty of deep thinkers are warm, funny, capable in a room full of people. The tell is not the room. The tell is what the room costs. You can do the crowd, sometimes genuinely enjoy the crowd, and still feel, an hour in, a specific quiet tax being collected, some meter running that other people do not seem to have. And afterwards, you need what they do not need: the empty car, the long shower, the stretch of silence that is not sad and not lonely but simply required, the way a diver requires the surface. That is the energy economics Jung was pointing at. Outward costs you and inward restores you, and no amount of practice at the outward life reverses the flow. It was never supposed to reverse. It is not a leak to be fixed. It is the direction you face. And a world built by the outward facing does not know what to make of a person like that, so it decides things about you. It decides quiet means unhappy, and asks if you are okay in a voice that makes okay feel mandatory. It decides that wanting the evening to yourself means something is missing from your life, when the evening to yourself is often the fullest part of it. It builds its schools and offices and celebrations around constant contact, scores enthusiasm out loud, gives the prizes to the quickest hand up, and then wonders aloud why you seem more yourself in the corner conversation with one real person than in the center of the noise. You have absorbed 100 small corrections like that, and none of them were really about you. They were about a world that has forgotten a great portion of its own population. Because the inward-facing are not rare. They are everywhere, one in every few faces you pass, hiding in plain sight behind competent surfaces, two complete ways of being human sharing every street, neither one a diagnosis, neither one a failure of the other, just two directions to stand in the same wind. And Jung knew this type from the inside because he was one. As a boy, he sat alone for hours, absorbed in games and questions he told no one about. As a man, he built a stone tower by a lake, a place with no electricity, no telephone, nothing fast, and he would retreat there for weeks to be with his own mind. The greatest explorer of the human interior was a person exactly like you, someone whose thoughts had gravity, whose inner rooms were endless. He did not cure himself of it. He made it his life's work. Keep that close tonight. The trait you have been trying to switch off is the same trait he followed all the way to a body of knowledge that changed how humanity understands itself. It is worth sitting a moment with that tower of his because there is a lesson built into its stones. He began it in middle age on the shore of a lake in Switzerland, and he kept adding to it for 30 years, largely with his own hands. He learned to cut stone for it, and he kept it deliberately primitive. He cooked over fire there, drew water, lit oil lamps when the dark came, and let the nights be as long and as dark as nights actually are. The most sought-after mind in Europe, and his idea of necessity was a place with no conveniences at all, because what he considered necessary was inwardness, and everything convenient interrupts inwardness. At the tower, he said, he was in his true element. He wrote, he painted, he watched the lake, he let the deep layer speak without the world talking over it. Here was a man who had seen every kind of mind, and when he built a shelter for his own, he built it around silence, as if silence were the load-bearing wall. You cannot build a stone tower by a lake. Almost nobody can. But notice what he was really doing, because it is available to you tonight for free. He was taking the trait seriously. He gave his depth an address, an honored place, instead of treating it like a malfunction to be managed in the margins of a busy life. That single reversal from managing the depth to honoring it is the reversal this whole night is quietly asking of you. The tower was just what it looks like when someone commits to it completely, and this bed, this hour, this slow walk through ideas can be a smaller tower of your own. He wrote once, in a letter, a line that people have been passing hand to hand for a century. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Hear that again, slowly, because it is stranger than it sounds. The whole world will tell you that the doers, the busy ones, the outward-facing ones are the awake ones, and that a person lying still with their thoughts is doing nothing. Jung is saying the opposite. He is saying the person who never looks inward moves through their own life half asleep, pulled by wants and wounds they have never once examined. And the person who turns and faces what is actually in there, that person is waking up. By that measure, some of the most awake hours of your life have happened right here, in this bed, in the dark, in the very sessions of thought you have spent years apologizing for. There is a reason the field Jung built came to be called depth psychology, and the name is not decoration. His entire picture of the human mind is vertical. At the top, the daylight self, the one with your name on it, the one that answers emails and makes small talk and believes it is running the show. And beneath it, floor under floor, everything else. The memories that were never filed, the feelings that were never finished. The older layers still, The patterns and images every human being seems to inherit with the species, the reason the same stories keep being told in every country that has ever had a night sky. Jung took one look at that architecture and concluded that the daylight self is the smallest room in the house. Most of what a person is happens below, out of sight, and it does not stop happening just because nobody is watching. It hums down there. It sorts and pressures and reaches upward in moods you cannot explain, in dreams, in the sudden knowing you get about a person before they have said a word. And here is why that matters tonight. A deep thinker is simply someone whose flaws are less sealed off from each other. The trapdoors are lighter in you. Things travel up. When you meet someone new and feel the strange weight of recognition, when a piece of music undoes you for no reason you can name, when a small event lands with a force far bigger than its size, that is the lower house sending word. Most people have the same lower house, Jung would insist, the same vast cellars. They just cannot hear them. The ceiling is thicker. You hear everything, which is exactly why your nights are what they are, and exactly why your understanding of people runs as deep as it does. Same trapdoors, both directions. A mind that muffles nothing pays in noise and is paid in truth, and there has never been a version of you that could have had one without the other. Now, none of this means that digging is always noble. You know better, and so did he. Sometimes the corridor is a loop, wearing a corridor's clothes. We will get to that, and to what can actually be done about it, a little later tonight. But before any of that, the ground truth has to change. The ground truth is this: you are not a broken, shallow person. You are a working deep one. The machinery is not stuck on. It is on because it is the machinery you were issued, and it has been running your whole life, and it is running now, softly, underneath these very words. Notice something with me. Even as you listen, some part of you is doing the thing, testing what I say against your own nights, pulling up examples, wondering if this is really you or only close to you. That is the trait, live, in this moment. You cannot not do it. And tonight, for once, you do not have to try. Let it test. Let it wander. It always comes back on its own. Which raises the real question, the one this whole night turns on. If the depth is natural, why does it choose this hour? Why does the digging always start when your head touches the pillow? Why not at lunch? Why not on the drive home? Why now? There is an answer, and it is gentler than you think, and it changes how the next hours of tonight might feel. That is where we go next. Think about what your day actually asks of a mind like yours. From the moment the alarm sounds, the world starts talking. Messages, meetings, headlines, other people's voices, other people's needs. Every one of them lands on the surface of your attention and demands to be handled now. And you handle them. You are probably good at handling them. But notice what never gets a turn. The deep layer. The layer that wants to sit with one question for an hour. That wants to follow the corridor, that wants to finish a thought for once instead of dropping it half-formed because the phone rang. All day long, That layer waits. It waits the way a patient dog waits by the door, hearing everything, saying nothing. Then night comes. The noise stops. The demands stop. For the first time in 16 hours, the deep layer gets the floor. And it takes the floor. Of course it takes the floor. Everything it collected all day, every unfinished thought, every swallowed feeling, every glance and doubt and half-noticed unease, it has been holding all of it, and now it finally has room to spread the collection out and look at it. What you call racing thoughts is very often just this: the backlog, the days unlived inner life arriving all at once because you gave it no other appointment. Scientists who watch the brain at rest found something that surprised them, and it belongs in this story. When a person stops doing tasks, when they lie still with no assignment at all, the brain does not power down. A particular web of regions switches on, and it runs hot precisely when nothing is happening outside. It is the machinery of inward attention, of memory and imagination and self-reflection, and in some people it burns brighter than in others. In minds like yours, it can be a furnace. So even the science agrees on the basic point. Stillness is not off. Stillness is when the inner machinery does its truest work. You lie down, the world lets go of you, and the furnace lights. Nothing has gone wrong when that happens. A schedule has simply been kept, the oldest schedule your mind knows. Walk through it once the way it actually goes, and you will see the schedule at work. Say the day was full. Not terrible, just full. Somewhere around 10 in the morning, a colleague said something with an edge on it, and you clocked the edge and there was no time, so you dropped it. At noon, you read a piece of news that opened some cold little question about the future, and there was no time, and you dropped that too. Mid-afternoon, a memory surfaced for no reason, an old friend you have not called, and it tugged, and you dropped it. By evening, you had dropped a dozen things the way a busy person drops them, each one caught for half a second and released. And where did they go, all those dropped things? Down the stairs, every one, to the deep layer, which caught them all because that is its job, and stacked them and waited. Then you lay down. And within 10 minutes, there they all were again, coming up the stairs in single file. The edge, the cold question, the old friend, each one saying, so gently, you wanted to think about this. Because you did. You just never got to. The night rush was never new thinking. It is the day's thinking, finally allowed to happen, arriving in the only opening your life left for it. And notice the cruelest twist, the one that convinces you something is wrong with you. The more exhausted you are, the worse it gets. On the truly drained nights, the backlog is biggest and your steering is weakest, and so the flood is strongest exactly when you can least afford it. You conclude that your mind is punishing you. It is not. It is simply that a depleted mind loses its grip on the wheel first and its engine last. The digging runs on something older than willpower, and willpower is what tiredness takes. That mismatch is the whole misery of the deep thinker's midnight, and not one particle of it is malice, and not one particle of it is you failing. It is scheduling. It has only ever been scheduling. And things that are scheduling problems, unlike broken minds, can actually be worked with. Hold that thought loosely. We will pick it up again before the night is through. And while we are redeeming the night, let it be said plainly, the night has always belonged to minds like yours. You come from a long line of people awake at this hour on purpose. The monks who rose in the black cold to sit with the largest questions because they knew the day would never allow it. The poets and the scientists who did their truest work after the household went down in the one stretch of hours that asked nothing of them. The watchmen and the lighthouse keepers, alone with the dark and their own slow thoughts, half of them philosophers whether they meant to be or not. There is even reason to believe that for most of human history, people did not sleep the night straight through at all. In the old records, people speak of first sleep and second sleep, 2 rests with a quiet hour or 2 between them. And in that hour, they prayed, thought, talked softly, lay in the dark, letting the mind wander where it would. Waking in the middle of the night was not a disorder to them, it was an appointment. The unbroken 8 hours we all measure ourselves against is, by the reckoning of history, rather new. So, on the nights you surface at 3 with your mind already walking, you are not failing at sleep. You may simply be keeping an hour your ancestors kept on purpose, an hour the modern world forgot and then pathologized. The dark does not think you are broken. The dark has met 1,000 generations of you. It was the deep mind's library long before it was anyone's deadline. You may have noticed, too, that the depth has seasons. It is not the same volume all year, all life. Some stretches it idles almost politely, and you sleep for months like anyone, and you dare to think you have outgrown it. Then a threshold comes, and it wakes. A birthday with a round number on it, an ending, a beginning, a diagnosis in the family, a child leaving, a door closing somewhere in the story of you, and suddenly the nights are full again, the ledger out, the corridors lit. Autumn does it to some people, the year visibly letting go of things. The last nights of an old year do it to nearly everyone deep, and none of that is relapse. That is the machinery doing precisely its job, because thresholds are exactly what depth is for. Shallow attention is fine for the flat stretches of life. At the crossings, the mind that measures, that asks what mattered, and what is being left behind and who you are on the far side, that mind earns its keep. If this happens to be one of your loud seasons, if the nights have been fuller lately and you have been wondering why now, look for the threshold. There usually is one, even a quiet one, even one you have not admitted is a threshold yet. The digging is not random. It is your deepest part, doing the accounting your life is actually asking for, and it will settle down, as it always eventually does, when the crossing has been made and the counting is done. And here is the part I most want you to hear, because it can take the dread out of the next hour. The furnace is not trying to keep you awake, it is trying to finish. Your mind hates the unfinished, the way a musician hates an unresolved chord. All those thoughts you dropped, half-formed during the day. It wants to resolve them, one by one, and it believes, honestly believes, that it is helping. The pressure you feel behind your eyes at night is not sabotage. It is service, clumsy, mistimed, exhausting service, from the most loyal part of you, a part that never once in your whole life stopped working on your behalf. Psychologists who study this kind of night mind draw a line down the middle of it, and the line is worth learning because it will let you tell the good hours from the wasted ones. On one side is what they call reflection. Reflection is thinking with a direction. It is curious rather than afraid. It asks, what really happened there? What does it mean? What would I do differently? And each answer becomes ground you can stand on. Reflection is the corridor that actually descends. You come back from it with something. On the other side is rumination. Rumination is the loop. It is fear walking in a circle. It asks the same question again and again, not because it wants an answer, but because it is afraid to stop asking. Why did this happen to me? What is wrong with me? What if? What if? What if? It hands you the same stone every time you reach out, and no matter how many times you inspect the stone, it never becomes a key. Same depth, same machinery, two completely different journeys. And the strange comfort is this. The problem was never that you think too much. People who reflect deeply are not more miserable than other people. If anything, the opposite. The problem is only that a tired, frightened mind slides from one mode into the other without noticing, the way a driver drifts across a lane. Late at night, tired and undefended, you drift into the loop, and the loop feels like thinking, and so you blame the thinking. You have spent years blaming the wrong thing. It was never the depth. It was the drift. You can see the difference clearly if you put the same memory through both machines. Take a hard one, an old failure, the kind every life collects. Reflection picks it up the way a historian picks up a document. What actually happened there? Not the story I tell about it, the thing itself. What was I afraid of that year? What did I not know yet that I know now? And something happens as those questions do their work. The event stays sad maybe, but it starts to have edges, a beginning and an end, a place in the larger story instead of a hole in it. You set it down changed. That is the descent. It costs something, and it pays for itself. Now give the same memory to the loop. The loop does not ask what happened. The loop asks, why am I like this, and how could I have done that? And it does not wait for answers because the questions are not really questions. They are flinches with question marks on them. The memory does not develop edges, it spreads. It bleeds into other memories, recruits them, becomes proof of a pattern, and the pattern becomes a verdict about you. And an hour later, you are not examining one old failure anymore. You are standing trial for your entire character, At midnight with no defense counsel awake. Same mind, same depth, same raw material. The difference is only what is holding the shovel. Curiosity digs, fear circles. And the reason the loop is so hard to catch is that it wears the costume of diligence. It feels responsible. It feels like you are finally taking the problem seriously, and stopping would be letting yourself off some hook. That is the loop's one great trick. The belief that the suffering is productive, that circling the stone long enough will one day be the same as opening it. It will not. You have circled some stones for years, you know this in your bones, and the stones have not opened because loops do not open things. Only questions open things, real ones, the kind that are willing to hear an answer. The loop is not evidence that you care. You cared before the loop and you will care after it. The loop is just fear, borrowing your depth, wearing its uniform. You do not have to fix any of that tonight. Just learning that the line exists is enough for now. Later, I will show you how minds like ours learn to notice the drift and step gently out of the loop without fighting it. For now, only notice how different those two feel from the inside. The descent that feeds you, the circle that starves you. You have known both. You could tell them apart in the dark. In a way, you always could. Let your body settle a little deeper while we stay here a moment. Feel how heavy your legs have become. The night is long and nothing about it is against you. Even the furnace, even the backlog, even the loops. All of it is just a deep mind doing what deep minds do when they have been given, at last, a little silence. There is another tax on this trait, and we should name it while everything is quiet, because you have been paying it in daylight your whole life. The world misreads deep thinkers. It always has. And if no one ever tells you that the misreadings are misreadings, you end up filing them all under evidence. One more proof that something in you needs correcting. Take slowness. A deep mind is often slow to answer because it is not retrieving an opinion off the shelf. It is actually considering the question. Someone asks what you think, and there is a pause, a real pause, while the corridors do their work. And the world has never known what to do with that pause. In school, it looked like not knowing. In meetings, it looks like hesitation. Quicker people fill your pause with their own voices, and by the time your answer has formed, the conversation has moved 3 streets away, and your answer, often the best one in the room, gets folded quietly back into your pocket. Years of that will teach a person to distrust their own tempo. But the pause was never emptiness. The pause was the thinking. Jung's inward type moves through the world exactly this way, he said. The depth is the delay. You cannot have one without the other. Or take your need to understand things before you act. Other people seem able to leap and figure it out on the way down. You have never once been able to do that comfortably. You need to see the shape of a thing first, walk around it, know what it is. And so you have been called overcautious, indecisive, too much in your head. But notice what actually happens when you finally do move. You move well. You move once. While the leapers are on their third correction, you are already where you meant to be. A deep mind pays its costs before the decision. Quick minds pay after. Nobody escapes paying. Yours just settles the bill in private at night, in hours like this one, which is part of why nobody ever sees how much your steadiness costs you. There is a particular weight, too, in the way you see around things. When has your mind ever shown you one side of anything? Ask you a question with any size to it and you see the case for, and the case against, and the case that the question itself is wrong all at once, each with a face and a voice. It makes you fair. People sense that fairness and trust it, but it makes choosing feel like a small bereavement every time, because you are the rare kind of person who actually feels the weight of the roads not taken. The quick and certain do not have this problem. They see one road brightly lit and walk it. You stand at the junction, seeing every road at once, knowing something real is lost whichever way you go. Nobody warns you that clear sight makes life heavier. It is still sight. You would not trade it at noon. It only aches at night when the junctions of your past come back asking to be re-walked, and the surface of daily life asks something of you that it never asks of them. Small talk, the weather, the traffic, the weekend. You can do it. You have done it for years, but you feel the specific effort of it, like a tall person in a low-ceilinged room, careful all the time. It is not contempt. You do not think you are above anyone. It is hunger. 20 minutes about nothing leaves you hungrier than silence would, while one honest exchange, one conversation where somebody actually says a true thing can feed you for a week. You remember those conversations for years. You collect them the way other people collect photographs. And when someone catches you quiet in a gathering and asks if something is wrong, the honest answer, the one you never give, is that nothing is wrong. You were just listening to the realer conversation underneath the audible one, the one about who is lonely and who is pretending and who loves whom. You hear that one whether you want to or not. Depth does not switch off in company. It just goes quiet and takes notes. And there is one more tax, the sneakiest of them. The comparing. You know the morning version of it. You arrive somewhere having slept 4 hours, having spent the night in the corridors, and everyone around you seems scrubbed and simple and fine. They talk about their shows and their weekends. Nothing appears to be moving under their surfaces at all. And you conclude quietly for the 1,000th time that everyone else has a piece you were denied. But look at what you are actually comparing. You are comparing your inside to their outside. You have full access to your own 3 in the morning, every loop and doubt of it, and no access whatsoever to theirs. You do not see the woman 2 desks over, who was also awake, also circling something, also certain she was the only one. You see her coffee cup and her calendar and her good morning. Everyone is a lake seen from the shore, calm by default, because surfaces are calm. That is what surfaces are. Some of them truly are as smooth below as above, the quick minds, untroubled and unbothered, and good for them. Truly. But a great many are exactly like you, running deep and hiding it, doing the same comparison in reverse, looking at your composed face and concluding that you have the secret. The loneliness of the deep thinker is largely a trick of the light. The others do not gather somewhere without you. They are scattered through every room you enter, disguised as fine, recognizing nobody, being recognized by nobody. Each one privately certain the depth is theirs alone. And then there is the feeling of it, because deep thought is never only thought. Everything that goes down the corridor comes back wearing feeling. You do not just remember the conversation, you re-feel it. You do not just consider a risk, you live briefly inside the version of your life where it goes wrong. People say you take things too hard, hold on too long, care too much about words that others would shed in an afternoon. But taking things hard is what taking things seriously feels like from the inside. The depth and the tenderness are the same trait. A mind cannot register everything and feel nothing. It was never an option, and you were never offered it, and nothing about that is a flaw. Nowhere does this show more than in how you love. Have you ever once managed a casual attachment? Truly casual, surface all the way down. You do not do them, not really, whatever you pretend. When you let someone in, you let them into the deep rooms, and they take up residence there in a way they may never fully know. You remember what they said in passing 4 years ago. You notice the 2-degree drop in their voice on the phone and carry it around all afternoon. You think about their inner life, their childhood, the fears they have never quite told you, the person they are trying to become, and you hold all of it the way you hold everything, thoroughly. And this makes you, whether anyone has ever said it to you or not, an extraordinary person to be loved by. To be loved by a deep thinker is to be actually seen, possibly for the first time, studied like a favorite book, remembered in detail, taken seriously, all the way down. But you know the ache that comes with it, because the depth of your attention is not always matched. You have probably known the particular loneliness of loving someone thoroughly, who loves you back in summary, of being the one who remembers the anniversary of things that have no name, while the other person is fond of you the way they are fond of a good chair. Nothing is wrong with them. Summary. Love is still love, but a deep heart next to a light one can feel like speaking your whole language to someone who only learned the greetings, and the conversation you are starving for stays inside you, composed and never sent. If that ache is one of the things that visits you at this hour, let it arrive tonight, without the usual verdict attached. Wanting to be known all the way down is not neediness, whatever you have told yourself. It is your nature asking for its own kind, and the capacity that makes the want so sharp, the seeing, the remembering, the taking seriously, is the exact capacity that makes you the one others will never forget being loved by. The want and the gift are one thing. They always were. And do you notice what all your worst questions have in common? The ones that circle at this hour. Why can I not just let things go? Why does everyone else find this easy? What is wrong with me? Look at them again, slowly, with what you know now. Every single one assumes the verdict before it asks. Why can I not let go assumes that letting go quickly is the healthy setting when your setting was never quick, and holding on long enough to understand is the very thing people prize in you. Why does everyone else find it easy assumes you have seen inside everyone else and you have not. You have seen their surfaces, and surfaces are calm by definition. And what is wrong with me is not even a question. Say it to yourself and listen. There is no curiosity in it anywhere. It is a sentence being passed, dressed as an inquiry, and you have passed it on yourself some nights 12 times before midnight. A deep mind deserves better questions than these. It deserves the real ones. What is my mind trying to finish tonight? What did today drop that wanted more time? What threshold am I standing at that has the ledger out again? Ask any of those and feel the difference in your own chest. The fake questions close you like a fist. The real ones open something even when they have no answer yet. You, of all people, know what a good question is worth. You have just been aiming them at everything in the world except your own worth. Underneath all of these, though, there is a quieter misreading, the one that costs the most, and you have mostly done this one to yourself. Somewhere along the way, watching everyone else fall asleep easily and answer quickly and let things go, you concluded that they had mastered something you kept failing. And so you have spent years trying to be a quick mind, the way a violin might spend years trying to be a drum, wondering why the simplest rhythms feel unnatural. It was never a failure of discipline. You were measuring your mind with an instrument built for a different one. Jung had a phrase for the real assignment of a life, and it points the opposite way entirely. The task, he thought, is not to become like the others. The task is to become who you actually are, all the way, deliberately, the acorn growing into the oak it was always going to be. He called that process individuation, becoming undivided, becoming one thing wholly rather than several halves of other people's things. A deep thinker who finally stops apologizing for depth is not giving up on growth. They are beginning it. Feel what that reversal actually offers you, because it is not a small thing. Consider how much of your strength has gone over the years into the impersonation, into answering faster than your mind wanted to answer, into keeping the face light while the depths were working, into pretending the small talk was enough, the quick decision was comfortable, the surface was where you lived. Decades of that, maybe. A second career's worth of effort, all spent playing a quick mind, and played well enough that most people bought it, and exhausting in a way you could never explain, because the exhaustion of being someone else does not show up anywhere you can point to. Jung would say that effort was worse than wasted. Every year spent perfecting the impersonation is a year not spent becoming the thing you actually are. And the thing you actually are is the only thing that was ever going to feel like rest. That is the strange economy of it. Being yourself is not one more task on the list. It is the end of the hardest task. The oak does not labor to stop being a poor imitation of grass. It just stops. And the stopping is the growing. Somewhere in you tonight, there is a version of this same stopping available, small and immediate. The next time the pause comes before your answer, let it be a pause instead of a failure. The next time, An evening alone is what you want, let it be a choice instead of a symptom. Each one of those is a brick out of the wall between you and your own nature. Nobody builds themselves by force, Jung thought. They unhide themselves piece by piece, and what was under the hiding turns out to have been finished all along. So let some of that settle where it wants to settle. The pause was thinking. The caution was thoroughness. The tenderness was seriousness. And the standard you have been failing was never your standard. You are allowed to put it down now. You have carried it a very long way, and it was never yours to carry. And once that standard is down, once you stop measuring the depth as a defect, you can finally look at it directly and ask what it is for, because it is for something. This is the turn in tonight's story, the place where the whole picture rotates. Everything that makes your mind heavy at night is the underside of something that makes it extraordinary in the light. Not extraordinary in spite of the depth. Extraordinary because of it. Stay with me. This part is yours. Start with where meaning comes from. Not pleasure, meaning. The sense that a life adds up to something, that events are not just beads on a string, but a story going somewhere. Meaning is not lying around on the surface of the world. It has to be made, and it is made by exactly the operation your mind performs every night without being asked. Connecting the present to the past, holding an event up against the whole shape of a life, asking what matters and why, refusing to let things pass unexamined. That is the digging. When people stand at the big thresholds of their lives, weddings, gravesides, hospital corridors, midnight kitchens, and reach for something true, they are reaching for the work of minds like yours. Depth is where the meaning gets made. Yours has been making it for years, quietly, for free, mostly at terrible hours, and nobody ever thanked the machinery. There is an old teaching story about this, and it has been told for centuries because it will not stop being true. A man is on his hands and knees under a streetlight at night, searching the ground. A neighbor stops to help. "What are we looking for?" "My key," says the man. And they search together, all around the pool of light, and find nothing. Finally, the neighbor asks, "Are you sure you lost it here?" "No," says the man. "I lost it in my house." "Then why are we searching out here?" "Because," says the man, "this is where the light is." And everyone laughs, and then, if they are honest, everyone goes quiet. Because whose life is that story not about? The key is inside in the dark of the house, and almost everyone searches outside under the light, because the light is easier. New purchases, new plans, new distractions, anything visible, anything bright, while the actual key sits in the unlit interior where nobody wants to kneel. You kneel there. That is the whole difference. You search where the key actually is, and you pay the price of searching in the dark, and you get called strange for it by the people still circling the lamp post. And it matters more now than it ever has, this willingness of yours. Think about the world your mind lives in. Everything about this age is engineered against depth. Every screen is a street light. Every feed is built to keep the surface so busy, so bright, so endlessly refreshed that the stairs down are never even noticed, let alone taken. Attention has been made into a currency and strip mined, and the shallows have never been so crowded or so loud. In an age like that, a person like you, who can still hold one thought for an hour, who can still sit with a question until it opens, who still visits the deep rooms at all, is not a leftover from a slower time. You are carrying something the age is actively losing. Depth is becoming rare the way silence is becoming rare, and rare things do not lose value. They gather it. The very trait this world made you feel slow for is the one it is quietly running out of. And think about who people bring their real questions to. Not the quick, certain ones. When something actually breaks in a person's life, when the easy answers have failed them, they find their way to whoever will sit with the question without flinching. To the friend who does not rush them, who says, "Tell me all of it," and means it. That friend is you. It has probably been you your whole life. People hand you the things they cannot say at dinner, because some animal part of them can tell you have rooms deep enough to hold it, the same rooms that keep you up. The corridor you pace at night is the corridor they are received into by day. It is one architecture. You cannot be shallow for yourself and deep for others. Nobody can. Count them sometime, the ones who found their way to you. The friend who calls you, specifically you, when the test results come back wrong, though she has friends she has known longer. The co-worker who lingers at your desk with something clearly not about work behind his eyes, waiting for you to ask, because he knows you will ask, and that you will mean it. The relative who sits next to you at the family gathering and, in the middle of all that noise, quietly tells you the true thing, the marriage, the fear, the doubt, while the room laughs around you both. Even strangers do it. You have had strangers tell you their lives on airplanes, in waiting rooms, in checkout lines, and you have wondered, why me? What is it about me? It was never an accident. People read depth the way animals read weather. They can feel who has flaws and who has floorboards over a shallow crawl space. And when they are carrying something heavy, they steer for the deep water on instinct, because heavy things can only be set down where there is room beneath them. You have been that room your whole life, and notice gently that nobody who came to you with their heavy thing has ever once complained that you think too much. Down there, in the moments that actually matter, your depth has never been too much for anyone. It has been exactly enough. The only person who ever files complaints about it is you at this hour in this bed. Jung wrote a line late in his life that belongs to you as much as anyone. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, he said, but by making the darkness conscious. Hear that again. Not by imagining light, by making the darkness conscious. That is a job description. And it is the job your mind has been reporting to every night of its adult life. Going down into the unlit parts, the regrets, the fears, the unfinished, and dragging them one at a time up into awareness where they can finally be seen and named and released. The world calls it dwelling. Jung called it the only real transformation there is. Most people never go down at all. They keep the lights on and the music playing their whole lives, and the cellar stays full, and everything in it runs them from below without their knowledge. You go down, clumsily, unwillingly, at 2 in the morning, without a lamp, but you go. And every trip down, whatever it costs you in sleep, is a piece of darkness made conscious, a piece of your life reclaimed from the dark. There is an old idea that keeps surfacing in every tradition that ever thought hard about human beings, and Jung gave it its modern shape. The wound and the gift arrive together. Whatever in a person is most sensitive, most easily hurt, most inconvenient, is almost always the exact site of what they have to offer. The trait is one thing, experienced 2 ways. You have felt the wound side of your depth all your life, the insomnia, the loops, the loneliness of seeing more than you can say. Tonight, just for these hours, feel the gift side, the understanding people come to you for, the meaning your life actually has, which shallower waters could never have grown. The fact that nothing important has ever gotten past you unexamined. You have been reading your mind's ledger and seeing only the costs. There is another column. There was always another column. Are you still with me, or are you starting to drift? Either is exactly right. If you are drifting, go. Everything that matters tonight has already been planted, and it keeps working with or without your attendance. That is the whole nature of the deep layer, as you now know better than most. And if you are still here, still listening, still turning each idea over as it arrives, testing it against your own nights the way you test everything, then let me say plainly what you may already have begun to suspect. This very act, what you are doing right now, following a long, slow thought through the dark, gladly at this hour, is the trait we have been talking about all night. Nobody without your kind of mind is still here. They left in the first 10 minutes, or they were asleep in 5, lucky and lighter and elsewhere. You stayed because ideas about your own depths are the most interesting thing in the world to you, and there is no version of you they would not be. So, take the night itself as your evidence. You are not listening to a description of some other kind of person. You are the demonstration. None of this romance changes the fact that it is late and you would like to sleep. I know. A gift that will not let you rest still needs handling, and handling can be learned. That is where we go now, gently. Let us talk about something practical, not fixing the depth, working with it the way you would work with any strong current, which is what it is. The first thing to understand is why force has never worked, because you have tried force. You have lain here commanding yourself to stop thinking, and you have noticed that the command is itself a thought, and that the mind treats it like one more thing to chew on. A deep mind cannot be ordered still, but it can be satisfied. Remember what the furnace actually wants. It wants to finish. It digs at night because the thoughts of the day were dropped half-formed, and it cannot bear the unfinished. So the practical art is not suppression, it is completion. You give the mind its finishing time on your terms, so it does not take that time on its own terms, here, at the worst possible hour. The shape of it is simple. Somewhere in the evening, well before this bed, you give the deep layer the floor on purpose. Not long, a quiet stretch with a notebook, or a slow walk, or just a chair and a window and nothing else, and you let the backlog come. You ask the day what is unfinished in you, and you let the answers arrive one at a time, and you receive each one the way you would receive that friend, without rushing. Some thoughts only needed to be heard once all the way through, and they go quiet on their own, like a child who stops calling out the moment someone finally answers. Others are too big to finish in an evening, and for those the work is different. You do not solve them. You set them down deliberately, the way a craftsman leaves work on the bench, tools beside it, knowing it will still be there tomorrow. There is an enormous difference in the body between a thought abandoned and a thought adjourned. The mind will accept adjournment. What it cannot accept is abandonment, and abandonment is what a distracted day does to every thought it drops. So you adjourn, one piece at a time on purpose, in the evening light instead of the dark. If writing is your way, it can be almost embarrassingly small, one line per unfinished thing, not a diary, not eloquence, nobody will ever read it. The edge in the colleague's voice, one line. The cold question about the future, one line. What the line does is not solving. It is receipting. It tells the deep layer in the only language it trusts. This has been logged. This will be returned to. You can put it down now. You will be astonished what a mind will release once it has a receipt. And if walking is more your way, walk. Deep minds have always loved motion without destination, the body busy enough to unlock the thoughts, the world sliding past, slow enough to think against. Half the philosophy in the world was walked before it was written. The form does not matter. Chair, notebook, sidewalk, shower. What matters is that the depth gets a standing appointment in your waking life, some daily window it can rely on. Reliability is the entire trick. The mind floods the night when the night is the only slot never taken from it. Give it a better slot, keep giving it, and watch the midnight pressure drop over the weeks. Not gone. Lower. Lower is a different life. And be gentle with yourself about the nights it fails, because some nights it will. There will be evenings you skip, and backlogs too big for one sitting, and seasons of real grief or real fear when no notebook on earth holds the flood. On those nights the practice is not the notebook. The practice is not adding the second layer, because the deep thinker's oldest reflex is to think about the thinking, to lie awake and then start digging into why am I awake? What is wrong with me? Here it is again. One sleepless night is weather. The judgment about the sleepless night is the storm. You cannot always stop the weather. You can almost always decline the storm. Lie there awake if awake is what tonight is, warm, breathing, resting the body even if the mind hums, and let that be enough. Rest is not all or nothing, whatever the clock says. A night of quiet lying is worth more than a night of quiet lying plus a trial about it. And then there will still be nights like this one, when something slips past the evening and arrives at the pillow anyway. For those, learn the watcher's move. It is the oldest move there is, and it is the only one that works down here. When a thought arrives, you do not fight it, and you do not board it. You name it, silently, without drama. There is the replay again. There is the what if. Naming does something quietly enormous. It splits you in two in the best way. There is the thought, and there is the one who noticed the thought. And the one who noticed is not thinking. The one who noticed is just watching, and watching is restful, and you can live there. Thoughts keep arriving, of course they do. The furnace is the furnace. But there is a difference, as wide as a sky, between standing on the platform watching the trains come through and being dragged aboard every single one. You have spent whole nights aboard. You know exactly how it goes. A thought pulls in, the replay, say, and before you have decided anything, you are 3 stations down the line in the middle of the old argument, heart going, and the bed and the dark and the breathing are all behind you somewhere. Boarding is not a decision. That is the thing to be gentle with yourself about. Boarding is a reflex, and you will keep doing it, and the practice is not to never board. The practice is to notice, at whatever station you notice, oh, I am aboard, and step off there, not at the first station, wherever you are. Even noticing an hour in is the practice working, not the practice failing. And when you step off, give your attention somewhere to land, because attention cannot stand in empty air. Land it on the body. The body is always in the present tense. It is the one part of you that cannot time travel, which makes it the perfect platform. The weight of your head, exactly as it presses the pillow right now, the heat under the blanket, the breath, not managed, just found, already breathing itself the way it has all night without your supervision. Rest your noticing on any one of those and let the departed train get smaller behind you. Another will come. Let it. Watch its lights approach, read its name as it passes, the rehearsal, the ledger, and let it go through the station without you on it. Tonight, even once, just watch one go by. Name it as it passes. That is the entire practice. It does not stop the trains. It gives you the platform. And the platform, you will find, is a surprisingly restful place to spend a night, even a whole night, listening to the distant traffic of your own mind from somewhere it can no longer carry you off. And while you stand there, remember the line from earlier, the one between the descent and the circle, because down here it becomes a practical tool. When you catch yourself thinking, ask one question only. Is this going anywhere? A real descent moves. It turns up new ground, even painful new ground, and it has the feel of getting somewhere. A loop hands you the same stone. Same question, same replay, 4th time, 10th time. Nothing new since the second time around. The moment you recognize the stone, you know which mode has you, and the knowing itself loosens its grip. You do not argue with the loop. Arguing feeds it. You just say, quietly, "This one is a circle," and you let the noticing do the work, and you come back to the pillow, the breath, the weight of the blanket. The loop may keep muttering for a while, loops do, but a named loop is a tamed loop. It has lost the disguise it depends on, the disguise of useful thinking, and without the disguise, it winds down like anything else that is no longer being fed. There is an old story monks used to tell about exactly this, and it is worth hearing in the dark. Two monks were walking to their monastery when they came to a river swollen with rain, and at the bank stood a young woman afraid to cross. The older monk, without a word, picked her up, carried her through the water, set her down on the far side, and walked on. The younger monk was scandalized. Their order forbade touching a woman at all. He said nothing, but he stewed. For hours he walked behind his elder, rehearsing the offense, arguing it, feeding it, the way a mind feeds the thing it cannot put down. At last, near nightfall, it burst out of him. "Brother, we are forbidden such contact. How could you carry that woman?" And the old monk looked at him with something like tenderness and said, "I set her down at the river. Are you still carrying her? You know why that story has lasted. Because you have carried people for whole days like that. Carried conversations for weeks. Carried versions of yourself for decades, arguing with them every step, certain the arguing was duty. The old monk is not quicker than the young one, or colder, or less serious. He has simply learned the one skill the young one has not. He does the thing, feels the weight of it, and sets it down where it happened. The carrying afterward was never required. It was never loyalty, never diligence, never care. It was just carrying. Somewhere back along your own road, there are things you set down years late, and you can feel, even now, the specific lightness of the mile after you finally did. That lightness is available closer to the river than you think. That is all the practice is, really. Noticing what you are still carrying and asking gently whether the river was not a long way back. One more practical thing, and it is about supper, not the food kind. Your deep mind eats whatever your day feeds it, and then your night cooks with those ingredients and nothing else. Have you noticed what your worst nights had for supper? Feed it an evening of alarm, the arguing voices, the feed scrolled one more time, the news at its most frightened. And do not be surprised when the small hours serve all of it back to you, rearranged and thickened. The furnace does not judge the fuel, it burns what arrives. And in this age, the loudest suppliers are the emptiest ones, engineered to hook the surface of you and leave the depths with nothing to do but churn. So mind the last hour. Not as a rule, deep minds hate rules at bedtime, but as a kindness, the way you would mind what you said to someone you loved right before they left on a journey. Give the mind something with a flaw to it in that final stretch, a few pages of something written slowly, music that is not trying to sell you anything, a slow walk to the window and an actual look at the actual night. Even these words now, this is that. This is supper for the deep layer, something substantial and unhurried, the kind of material that settles rather than churns. You cannot control what the workshop builds tonight. You have some say in what lumber it finds when the doors close. That is honestly all of it. Evening finishing time, so the night is not the mind's only appointment. Adjourn what cannot be finished. Watch and name what arrives anyway. Ask the one question, is this going anywhere? Nothing here is a trick, and none of it is a cure, because you are not a disease. It is just the owner's manual for the instrument you actually have. The manual nobody handed you. Quick minds never needed it. You did. Now you have it. And notice what all of these have in common. Not one of them fights the depth. Every single one honors it, gives it room, gives it time, treats it as the legitimate force it is. That is the secret under the whole practical art. The deep mind stops flooding the night the moment it trusts it will be given the day. It has only ever wanted to be included in your life instead of exiled to the end of it. As for tonight, specifically, this night you are actually in, here is all it asks of you. If a thought comes while you drift, and one will, you name it as it passes. You do not owe it boarding. If you catch yourself circling, you ask your one question, is this going anywhere? And you let the answer be no, without making the no mean anything about you. If the old verdict shows up, the one about being broken, you let it walk through the station like any other train, because you have seen its schedule now, and you know it carries no passengers anywhere worth going. And if none of that works, if tonight turns out to be one of the loud ones anyway, then your practice is the gentlest one of all. You lie here, warm, you keep your body resting even while your mind hums, and you decline the trial about it. That is the whole assignment. You cannot fail it. There is no version of the next few hours in which you do it wrong, because resting, humming, drifting, even watching, all of it counts. All of it is a deep mind, spending the night exactly as deep minds have spent nights for as long as there have been both. You are not behind. You are not doing this badly. You are just doing it awake sometimes, and even that, as you now know, is older and more ordinary and more honorable than anyone ever told you. Which brings us gently to the last stretch of tonight's walk, because there is one more reframe left, the deepest one, and it is about sleep itself. You have spent all these years thinking of your mind and your sleep as enemies, the digger versus the dark. I want to show you they were never enemies. The night you have been fighting for is actually where a mind like yours goes to do its greatest work. Almost there now. Stay soft. Keep breathing slow. Have you ever wondered what actually happens to your thinking when you sleep? Not to you, to the thinking itself, the question you carried to bed, the problem still warm when the lights went out. Where does it go for those hours? Does it wait for you, frozen, exactly where you dropped it? You know it does not, because you have seen the evidence 100 mornings. The thinking does not stop when you drift off. It changes hands. The surface mind, the worded one, the one listening to me right now, that one clocks out. And the deep layer, the one that has been waiting all day, takes over entirely, with the lights off and no supervisor. Sleep scientists have watched it work. In the night, the brain sorts the day's experiences, moves what matters into long-term keeping, lets the trivial dissolve, and knits new memories into old ones, finding connections the waking mind never noticed. You have felt the results your whole life. The problem that was a wall at midnight and a door at breakfast, the name that surfaced by itself in the morning shower, the decision that somehow made itself while you slept, that was not rest interrupting the thinking. That was the thinking, continued by other means, better means, in the workshop below the floor. Every deep thinker has met this workshop, even the ones who never believe in anything they cannot watch. You have met it. Some not you carried for weeks, argued with, made lists about, and then one morning, buttering toast, thinking about nothing, the answer just stood there in the middle of you, whole, obvious, wearing an expression that said it had been waiting. Where was it made? Not in the lists, not in the arguing. It was made below, in the hours you were not present for, assembled from pieces the surface mind had dropped in all directions and could never hold at once. The deep layer held them at once. It always could. It is not bound to one thought at a time the way the worded mind is. It works sideways, in parallel, in pictures, and it does its finest assembly precisely when the foreman is asleep and has finally stopped interfering with the crew. Jung built half his psychology on this workshop. Dreams, he insisted, are not noise. They are the deep mind speaking in its native language, images instead of words, working over exactly the material you carried down with you. He kept a notebook by his bed for decades and treated what he found there as seriously as anything a patient told him by daylight. He noticed what you have probably noticed and never said aloud, that dreams have a strange tact about them, that they seem to know what you are refusing to look at and bring it to you sideways, dressed as a house you once lived in, or a train you are missing, or a stranger with a familiar face. He did not think the dreaming mind was being obscure to tease you. He thought images were simply its mother tongue, and that it was doing its patient best to be understood across the gap. Whole chapters of his work are nothing but him listening to that language the way you would listen to a wise friend who cannot speak your dialect, leaning in, asking the image to say it again more slowly. You do not have to interpret anything tonight, none of that is required of you, but you might, some morning, simply pay attention to what the night hands you, not analyzing, just receiving. The mood a dream leaves on the first minute of the day, the image that lingers past breakfast. Deep thinkers often find there is something there, a letter from the lower house, already stamped and delivered while they slept. It costs nothing to read your mail, and it changes, slowly, how the whole enterprise of sleep feels. Bed stops being the place where thinking is forbidden and becomes the place where thinking is handed over. You are not going offline, you are going below, where your kind of mind keeps its best tools. You do not have to go that far. Just take the point that matters at this hour. For a person like you, sleep is not the opposite of thought. Sleep is where your kind of thought finally gets to work without interference. Falling asleep is not abandoning the questions. It is handing them to the older, wiser, wordless part of the operation, the part that has been solving things for you since before you could talk. So the surrender you have been resisting is not a surrender at all. It is a shift change. And you can feel how close it is now. The body has been ready for a while. The warmth, the weight, the breath gone slow and even. The only thing that ever keeps a deep thinker at the surface is the belief that the digging needs them personally, that if the worded mind lets go, the work stops. It does not stop. It goes deeper. Everything true you have ever understood came at least half from down there. You can let go of the handle now. The tool keeps turning on its own. Think of it like the tide if it helps to have a picture to fall asleep inside. All day the tide is out, and the deep floor of you lies covered in the day's debris. Everything dropped, everything unfinished, scattered where it fell. And now, tonight, the tide is coming back in. You can almost feel it, that slow, dark water rising through the lower rooms, lifting what was dropped, sorting it by weight, carrying some of it away entirely and setting the rest in better order than you could have managed by hand. No one supervises a tide. No one lies on the beach at midnight directing the water. It knows its work. It has done its work since before you existed, and every single morning of your life, it has left the sand changed, smoothed, more finished than the evening left it. You have woken up on that new sand thousands of times and never once seen the water that made it. That is what you are being asked to trust tonight. Not a void, not a stopping. A tide that has never once failed to come in, rising now through the deep house of you, patient and competent and older than thought, while the only part of you that worries goes finally, mercifully, off the clock. And you know how to do this. Let that be said clearly. Against every night you have believed otherwise, you have fallen asleep before, thousands of times. Every one of those nights, however late, however loud your mind, you eventually did the thing you are so sure you cannot do. You let go. You did not watch yourself do it. Nobody ever has. Sleep only takes the unwatched. But you did it, on your worst nights and your best ones, after heartbreaks and before verdicts, as a frightened child and as whoever you are now. Your body holds the full record. It has never once, in your entire life, failed to get you there in the end. So whatever is left in you tonight that is bracing, whatever small guard is still standing at the door, insisting it must stay awake to manage the descent, you can thank it and dismiss it. It was never needed. It has never once been the thing that got you across. You do not fall asleep by skill. You never did. You fall asleep the way you were carried as a child, by something that knows the way and does not need directions from the passenger. And so we come back, at the end, to where we began, with that mind of yours, the one that would not stop, Look how differently it sits now, the same mind, seen whole. It was never broken. It is a deep instrument in a world tuned for shallow ones, a furnace that lights when the world goes quiet, a corridor that leads all the way down to where the meaning is made. The pause was thinking, the caution was thoroughness, the tenderness was seriousness. The digging was the oldest and most loyal part of you, trying always to finish what the day left undone. You have spent years asking how to stop being this. That was never the question. The question was only ever how to live in it, and now you know the shape of the answer, and the rest is just practice and patience with a mind that deserves both. Somewhere back at the start of tonight, you were lying here holding the usual verdict, the one about being broken, the one you have fallen asleep under more nights than you could count. Check for it now, quietly, without making a project of it. You may find it has gone a little abstract, a little hard to take seriously, the way a frightening shape on the wall goes ordinary when someone turns on a lamp in the hallway. That is all understanding ever does, and it is enough. The shape was a coat on a hook the whole time. The mind that would not stop was a deep one, doing its work. The only way deep things work, thoroughly and at night and out of sight of the people who are graded on speed. Tomorrow, the world will be quick again and loud again, and it may try to hand you back the old verdict at some point, in a meeting, at a dinner, in a pause you let run 1 second too long. You do not have to take it back. You know what the pause is now. You have seen the rooms. You have met the keeper of them tonight on good terms, possibly for the first time. And the two of you have a long, useful, remarkable life still to run together. Let everything soften now. The explanations are over. There is nothing left in this night that needs your attention, and there is no version of tomorrow that gets better by being rehearsed from here. Feel where your body is holding on, and let it be told the news. Your jaw first. You have probably been thinking with your jaw all night. Deep minds do. Let it unclench. Let your teeth part a little behind your lips. Your brow next, where the questions sit. Smooth it, or just imagine a warm hand smoothing it. Either works. The brow cannot tell the difference, this tired. Your shoulders, which have been guarding you since this morning, let them fall away from your ears. They have done their shift. Your hands, wherever they are, let them open. Nothing needs holding. Whatever you were still gripping when you lay down tonight, the day, the question, the verdict, you can feel now that your hands were never actually holding it anyway. And your breath, last of all. Do not deepen it, do not count it, do not improve it in any way. Just find it, already moving, patient as a tide, and let your attention lie down on it the way your body is lying on this bed, fully, with your whole weight. You have carried your mind all day, every day, for years. For the next few hours, let something carry you. So tonight, there is nothing left for you to do. You do not have to finish the thoughts. The night shift finishes them. You do not have to solve the question you brought to bed. It will be worked on while you are gone. You do not have to earn your rest by reaching some imaginary quiet first. The quiet is not an entry requirement. It comes after you stop waiting for it. And you do not have to become a lighter, simpler, quicker person by morning. Nobody is asking that of you anymore. Not even you, if you can help it. Not tonight. You are not too much. You are deep, and depth was never a flaw. The ones who love you are held in those same rooms that keep you up. You have been the friend, the listener, the one who understands your whole life with this exact mind, the one lying here now. It was always enough. You were always enough. Whatever the hour says, whatever the noise upstairs says, you are already the thing you were trying to become. You are already home. If you would like to leave something here before you sleep, leave a single word in the comments. The word deeper. Nothing else. It is a small vow from one deep mind among many that you are done apologizing for the way you are made. And it stays here for the next person who arrives at this hour certain they are the only one awake like this. They are not. You were the proof, and if these slow nights are becoming a place you return to, you can subscribe and be here for the next one. Quietly, no fanfare. This lamp stays lit either way. But that is all tomorrow's business. For now, the watching can end too. Let the last thoughts come and go without you. The trains will run all night, and not one of them needs a passenger, and the platform empties, and even the watcher gets to lie down at last. The deep rooms are closing softly, one by one, the way rooms close in a house where everyone is finally safe. Whatever is unfinished is adjourned, not abandoned. It will keep. It will all keep. Rest now, deep one. The night shift has it from here. Sleep well.